Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Lisa from ORT SA Cape, as was introduced, and I'm thrilled to have you here for Unplugged but Switched On. So today we are going to explore how coding without computers can light up curiosity, build core life skills, and develop a growth mindset in young learners. You'll meet Dory the Dragon, as is on the screen, our Unplugged coding champion, and we'll even do a little coding with our bodies later. So expect stories, movement, and big ideas, all rooted in early learning and joyful teaching. So let's start with a question. You will see in the chat that we have put on, oh, you can't access the chat. We are wanting to put our Slido code on there. Let's have a quick look if we can do that. Is that possible, Novosti? There we go. Let's just quickly get Slido up. Is it coming through?
Not.
Sorry, everyone, we will get there. We are wanting you to answer the question in Slido, but we are just looking for the, oh yeah. Okay, let's do it this way. My Slido doesn't seem to want to come out, but we are wanting to ask the question, what sparks curiosity and excitement in your learners? So what I'd like you to think about is something that lights your children up, whether it's music, movement, making things, or even just asking why. Because you see, words like play, stories, questions, movements, puzzles, these are all things that spark excitement in your children. They are the exact tools that we use in Unplugged coding to make learning active, inclusive, and joyful. So we often think of coding as screens and syntax, but coding is really a way of thinking. It's about giving instructions, recognizing patterns, solving problems, and learning from mistakes. Unplugged coding means learning the core principles of coding without needing any screens or devices. Children use physical tools, movement, symbols, and storytelling to understand sequencing, logic, loops, conditions, and debugging. It's about building computational thinking in a concrete way, which is ideal for young learners whose brains are still developing these concepts. Unplugged coding brings this to life through story, movement, and hands-on exploration, especially powerful for young learners or those under-resourced settings. So let me introduce you to Dory the Dragon, our coding helper. Dory is curious, brave, and always up for a quest. Dory helps us teach coding concepts like navigating grids, directionality, sequencing steps, trying again when things go wrong, and children guide her through adventures using code. And they build real-world skills while imagining, laughing, and moving. So, Dory makes learning directions fun and memorable by using colors. She is built with 4 of our 6 bricks that we have been using in Duplo, and I have built little Dory, as you see on the screen, out of little Lego, with dark blue being at the top for forward, on the left, orange for turn left, turn right, red, and yellow for move back. And if you have a look at the first letters of all of those colors, D-O-R-Y, it spells out Dory. So when we remember Dory, we also remember our 4 key directional commands. And we use little Dory to help so the learners guide little Dory through little quests, which helps them with directionality. So this color system really helps young learners to build language, body awareness, and foundational coding logic. Okay, so we are now going to become Dory. I know that a lot of you have got your cameras off, but don't cheat now. But I would like each of you, if you can, please, to stand up, because I'm going to get you to move around like Dory. Because when we move our bodies and we actually experience it, that's when we're really going to learn those different directions. So first, I'm going to call out the directions for you. When you're standing up, you are now going to, when I say move forward, you will step one forward. When I say turn left, you will turn to the left. And turning to the left is different from stepping to the left. So turn left would now have you facing in the other direction. And if I had to say move backward, we would be going backwards, and forwards would be going forwards. This is very important, that we become little Dory when we are moving around, because children, when they are looking at something from a bird's eye view and they're wanting to move Dory around on the grid, it's very difficult for them to see turn left as a movement on the spot rather than stepping to the left. So we have now done that with our calling out of the directions, but I want to do it again. And this time I'd like to call out a color instead of saying the direction. So if you have a look at our slide, you will see, and I'm going to remind you, dark blue would be to move forward, turn left would be orange, turn right would be red, and move back would be yellow. I'm now going to call out, and I want to see if you can move in that direction. All right, dark blue, red, red again. Oh, you should have your back to me now. Orange, orange, yellow, yellow. I promise not to go out the room. Wait, let me come back. Okay, good. So you would then begin to associate color. Thank you. You can sit down now. Thanks, Novosti, for playing with me. Children begin to associate color with movement, which is a key early coding skill. Bearing in mind that children really struggle with left and right, and so we don't want to disadvantage them by having the colors just being in one, the directions being in one color. And of course, you can build short codes using color cards and get the learners to act them out. So this kind of embodied learning is powerful and memorable. I'm sure that you could feel that you were actually moving as Dory would move. And that's sequencing. You just followed a set of instructions like a computer would. This is coding, but it's also coordination, focus, and fun. Movement builds memory. It connects the body, brain, and emotions. When learners act out code, they're not just learning left and right. They're building motor planning and spatial awareness skills through movement and manipulation. They are building social emotional learning via their teamwork and communication. They're building executive functioning like memory, focus, and flexibility. Plus, it's inclusive, playful, and needs minimal resources. It makes abstract coding ideas tangible, linking well with how children learn best, which is through play and action. When learners help Dory reach her castle, they're not just coding, they're growing. And here's how. Creativity, designing stories and grid paths. Collaboration, through solving the puzzles together. Communication, giving and interpreting the code. Critical thinking, through testing and debugging. Citizenship, helping Dory and others, and character building, bouncing back when it goes wrong. All of these and others. Coding becomes a vehicle for deeper learning, and that's what makes it magic. In Dory's world, mistakes are part of an adventure. If she falls into a river, we debug the path and try again. Children learn that it's okay to be wrong. What matters is that they keep trying. And that's what a growth mindset is, turning frustration into fuel. You don't need much to get started. A grid, so floor tiles, masking tape, paper, chalk on the ground outside, colored direction cards in the Dory colors, and a small character like Dory. Optional, of course, you could use Lego bricks as we do, natural materials, story props, whatever inspires you can use. We have our own Dory kit, as you can see in the slide, which includes printable grid mats, Dory directional arrow cards, Dory tokens, and stories and quests. We wrap everything up in a story. Dory is on a mission, maybe to get to a castle, collect gems, avoid lava, or just to get snacks. Learners build sequences of instructions to help her reach her goal. It's coding as storytelling with beginning, middle, and end. Story-based learning builds language skills, sequencing, empathy, and imagination. And it's flexible, low cost, and classroom tested. The real shift isn't just about unplugging. It's about how we teach. Rather than just giving information, we invite learners to explore, make decisions, fail safely, and grow. Unplugged coding empowers teachers to be facilitators of discovery. So let's zoom into how Dory moves on a grid. She starts at one point and must reach her castle. She must collect gems, fly past lava, or even help a friend. Children give instructions step by step and test them. And of course, rework them should that not have been the correct way of doing it. But they're not just coding, they're strategizing, imagining, and building spatial intelligence. So let's try a quick challenge together. Have a look at the slide. Here is a grid. Dory is at the start, and there are gems, a castle, and a picnic spot for her to visit. Using the 4 Dory colors, can you code Dory to her new spot? And by using these directions, I'm going to give you the colors, and I'd like you to, in your mind's eye, move Dory on the grid according to those colors. And then we can see which spot she has decided for the day. So we are going to move dark blue, dark blue, dark blue, red, yellow, yellow, and yellow. Can you see which one she landed on? If you can, and I don't think we've got any access to the chat, but if you can tell me which one you think you landed on. Novosti, did you get it?
I think so. Is it the
Yes?
baskets?
Yes, the picnic baskets, exactly. So what is exciting about this is that it's a really simple concept, and yet we are learning so many things as we go along, directionality being one of the most important ones. But I think also what is great is that you work together as a group, so the children or the learners would be working together in a group, figuring it out. They can have the code in little cards, color cards. They could also use directional cards, should they choose, but they're working it out together and debugging should there be a bug in the code. What is also important is about chatting to them about different ways of getting somewhere. So you would have seen in this particular code, I said turn right and then go backwards, backwards, backwards. How often do we actually go backwards in life? Well, not metaphorically speaking, but do you ever step backwards? We often don't. And so it's not the very first thing that we think of when we are doing the problem solving in coding. We tend to want to turn little Dory right around and go forward. And I think it's important that we speak about the best and most effective way of going. So there are lots of things that you would notice when you are doing these sorts of activities. So I would like to talk a little bit about that coding is about thinking and not just about tech. We need to see it as unplugged and also switched on. I think when we say unplugged, often it's thought of as second best, or that we can only do unplugged because we haven't got the tech and it's just not the same. But actually, it should be first and foremost, before you even get to the tech, we are going to be using our bodies. And especially when you are learning something new, actually moving around on a grid, that it means you've got to walk out the grid. You can code your friend can code you. You can decide on what the plan is when you are problem solving, thinking about the different sequencing and the steps. So talking about algorithms, you're going to be looking at conditions, which are the rules of each of the games or each of the grids. There are a whole lot of coding concepts that come through. And this is very important, that we understand that those are the things that are being taught. And it's actually by doing things that we do anyway in a classroom, particularly in the early years. Using games like Simon Says, and being able to use our bodies, as well as using unplugged manipulatives like we do with Lego or other blocks that we may use in the classroom. And of course, we could use recyclables in order to make our different figurines or tokens that we use on the grids. So there's a power in using storytelling. So that's my next point, is that Dory is about storytelling, and so much of the way we learn is through stories. And you could do this so wonderfully with a character like Dory the Dragon. And of course, you can make it you can go wild with it, really. You can decide what you want the story to be about. You could make it relatable to any age group. So when you're using your body, you're also learning through that movement. We tend to forget that we need to, especially when we're learning new concepts, that we actually have our bodies moving. This is a very important step. So when we are talking about concrete, pictorial, and then moving to abstract, we should actually be starting with our bodies before we even get to the concrete. We also spoke a little bit about the 6 C's and growth mindset. So the 6 C's, we've moved on from it being the 4 C's. The 4 C's originally spoke about communication, creativity, critical thinking. And of course, we added 2 of those, and we've gone to citizenship, and we've also added character education. This is very important that we add those 2. It's a second layer that is much needed when it comes to these core critical thinking tools. And then we moved on to the practical tools that you can actually use in your classroom. I often say, as teachers, as good teachers, we have got everything at our disposal. We do not need to have anything that is brand new or shiny. It can be anything that we use around us. And in fact, things that children play with on an everyday basis, that is what they relate to. You don't need a robot to teach anything other than a step up from making it or taking Unplugged and seeing it in its next form. You don't need a robot to teach resilience. You just need to start with a dragon and some arrows. So I want you to think a little bit now about if there's been anything about what I've been saying in terms of the 6 C's and growth mindset, and perhaps just making a bit of a shift from instruction to discovery. And in fact, if we have a look at this one over here, the real shift isn't just about unplugging, it's about how we teach. And this is so important, that we don't just give information. We invite learners to explore and make decisions, to fail, but to do so safely and to grow. We have to create a culture in our classrooms of being able to do that. It's so important that children feel like it's not about right and wrong. And it's something we have to change our mindset about. Often, we have been taught like that. And so it's very hard to not think of things in right or wrong or black and white. And Unplugged coding empowers teachers to be facilitators of discovery. So what has sparked your thinking today? What is maybe something you will be walking off with? Can you imagine doing this in your context? Or do you already use movement or story to teach logic? And if so, how could you possibly integrate this into your everyday work? You know, I say we do these things all the time, and it really should be about linking coding and making coding concepts overt as opposed to teaching it as a separate subject. So I'm going to say now, Novosti, if there's anybody who has a question or who has perhaps at this stage anything that they want to ask or give some comments, then this would be a good time.
Feel free, colleagues, to unmute your microphone and ask a question or make a comment. It is a safe space. You can just unmute your microphone and ask a question or say your comment.
If there isn't, or while somebody is maybe still thinking about it, I think for me, this is such an important part of learning, is that we as educators change our way of thinking and our way of presenting. You know, we are actually the ones who are more scared of jumping in and doing things without making mistakes or not feeling like we've made mistakes. The children actually do it more naturally. And so a lot of what I do is about saying we need to model this behavior, this critical thinking and this growth mindset. And once you feel comfortable in doing that, then children actually are very forgiving of each other and of you, by the way. So it's a very exciting space to be playing in. And I think that we are we're on the brink of some very, very exciting things. And particularly with young children, I think that we are very lucky to be part of the changes that are happening at the moment. Let me just quickly tell you about, we do have some courses and workshops that we run, but I also have an email address at dory@ortsacape.org.za if anybody is interested in chatting to me more about it. Full disclosure, I am Dory. But really what I'd like to do is to just keep sparking curiosity. You know, I hope that you feel inspired to bring Dory into your classrooms and play your way into coding, but also not just to stay playful, but also to stay switched on. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to let us know. I'm sorry that my Slido didn't come out very well in the beginning. I would have liked to have had a discussion a little bit about, and in fact, I would love to go back to that, what sparks curiosity and excitement in your learners. I think that's a great place to start.
So if you've got any questions, colleagues, please feel free to unmute and ask your questions. Or if you've got a comment, you're more than welcome to express your comment. Let's engage with the speakers. It's our chance, it's our opportunity.
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Sonke.
I'd like to firstly thank Lisa for such a great presentation thus far. My comment firstly is that coming from a community where there are kids who are not exposed to the terminology that is used often when we deal with coding, how do you then try and bridge the gap of language barriers and to present them? I think one of the things that I also learned, it's using colors, you know, the Dory, the Dory exercise that you gave us sort of gave me a little bit of an idea, because colors, I think in many communities, doesn't matter which language that you speak, but these are types of words that you're familiar with, like dark blue, orange, yellow, and yellow. So I thank you very much for such a great analogy, and I think I'll try and use this basic step that you've given us. We are still trying to build our current patrons, and hopefully that with your resources, and I also took your email address. So from my side, I really appreciate the presentation so far.
Thank you, and thanks for your comment. Yeah, just to come back to, the language barrier it really is a big thing, and I think also just working in, in under-resourced areas and maybe even areas that really struggle with infrastructure or with Wi-Fi connection. A lot of that plays a big role when you are talking about technology. And so this is why we wanted to come up with something, or not even come up with something. Teachers are doing this all the time, but really finding the connection between coding concepts, which notoriously has been linked with technology or technology that is plugged technology, and really just thinking, what do we do anyway? We do talk about directionality. Children have to know about left and right. We do colors with them. What a great way for them to actually become the robot themselves. Because once you've done that, not only is it better to learn through your own body when you're learning a new concept, but also being able to do it and learning those coding concepts. So we literally start with the coding. We first start with what they know. We always do fun things like Simon Says, as I mentioned, or kind of the games that they already know. And then when we link it to those coding concepts, it's almost just putting a name to it. So when we talk about playing a game and talking about rules, those rules become what we call conditions when we talk about coding. When we talk about sequencing of different events or objects, we then speak about putting instructions in a sequence and having a set of instructions. For instance, like a recipe, we talk about a recipe, and then we talk about that is what an algorithm is. It's a set of instructions. So that language or the jargon that we use actually stems from the language that they're already using and that we build up. But I do say to teachers that coding is a language. So it has to start with vocabulary. If we don't have the vocabulary, we can't expect the children to express themselves, to ask questions, and to feel comfortable. But I'm very pleased to hear that you've enjoyed it. I must be honest, the Dory Code workshop that I do is almost 8 hours long. It does all of this in great detail. It's very difficult to kind of take a snapshot of it, but I'm glad that you could see that it was, it really is a simple concept that's just being used in a way that hopefully is helpful to teachers and learners alike.
If there's more questions or comments, colleagues, please feel free to unmute and ask or share a comment.